Welcome to the Boomer Briefing Podcast, where we help you solve a critical business issue in 20 minutes or less. I'm your host, Jon Hubbard, shareholder here at Boomer Consulting, and with me today is Jim Boomer. Hi, Jim.
Hi, John. How are you today?
Doing well. And Jim is our CEO, as most of you know, but we have a great topic that Jim is suited for, and that is how to create a growth mindset. How you as an individual listener or you as a firm or organization should be kind of developing, creating a growth mindset. So Jim, why is it important for firms, especially today, to be creating that growth mindset?
Well, it's a great question. I think first and foremost, as a leader in your organization or a leader of your team, it's really your mindset that sets the tone for the entire firm or team, and becomes that primary driver for the firm's success. And frankly, it's our mindset that shapes the level with which we can learn, change, and grow, both as individuals and organizations. So really, when you adopt a growth mindset, the firm becomes more of an innovative organization. And they're really willing to adapt to the changing needs and wants of your client base, but also proactively prepare your firm for the future as well.
Right. And as a leader in your firm, and Jim, you're this, role for us here at Boomer Consulting as the CEO. It's really energizing, right? When the leader of a team, a department, organization has a growth mindset, especially when you trust that individual, it can be really energizing to everyone. So I love your answer there. So let's talk about some ways, individuals can have and develop a growth mindset. What are some strategies or some techniques you've seen work really well?
Yeah, I'll answer that in just a sec. I want to comment on your energy, and just motivation. I mean, I think it goes both ways. Also, from a leader, when you create that momentum within your team and your organization, it's energizing as a leader to see that everybody's behind you and driving in the same direction. And it's so much more motivating to lead an organization in that way, in a much more collaborative way, than a top-down directive approach. So you made a great comment, but I think it's a two-way street. It can really give you that energy as a leader. So your questions, what solutions can you find to really help you in this journey to develop a growth mindset? First thing I'd say, I'd recommend starting by reading Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, the New Psychology of Success. It really does a great job of outlining the difference between a growth and a fixed mindset, but really explaining how mindset impacts growth and change in yourself and in your organization, as I said earlier. So just to give you some guidance, let me start with a couple of fallacies or misunderstandings about mindset, and then I'll lay out some steps for you to adopt a growth mindset. So in terms of misunderstandings, first, mindset's not an innate part of any of us. In other words, we weren't born either a fixed or growth mindset. You really develop it through your experiences, the people and role models that you align yourself with, and really the information and learnings that you consume. So you're not born with it. Second is that the two mindsets, fixed and growth, aren't an either or proposition. Really, no one has a completely fixed or growth mindset. People can vary to the degree with which they tend to lean to one or the other. And even depending on the topic or the circumstance or what you're facing, any single individual could have a fixed mindset in one and a growth mindset in another. So that's why it really takes an intentional effort to work on ourselves, to really adopt and develop that growth mindset. So, your question was, how does one go about developing a growth mindset. And I'll give you 6 steps to get started. This isn't comprehensive, and you can't stop after this because it's an ongoing process. But first and foremost is focus on learning. Commit to lifelong learning and consume as much information as you can. And especially continue to push yourself to expand your knowledge, skills, and thinking outside of your comfort zone. If you just stay in your lane all the time, then you're not really going to push yourself into that growth mindset and expand what's possible for yourself and your organization. Second would be choose the right role models. Take innovative ideas from thought leaders in the profession, follow them on social media and attend events where they're speaking. And as much as you can, model their thinking and their behaviors and their strategies within your own firm. And so those first two, we often use a quote that, you will be the same person you are today in 5 years, except for the people you meet and the books you read. So it's all about learning from others and learning from the resources that you can get, whether it's reading books or listening to podcasts. There's all kinds of resources to push our mindset into really that growth focus. Third would be challenge your current beliefs. So acknowledge that you have a fixed mindset, at least in some areas, and really self-reflect on where you have self-limiting beliefs. Once you admit that and identify those areas, then you can really work on growth in these areas and pushing yourself again beyond your comfort zone. Fourth would be setting a vision and defining goals. A vision for an organization paints the picture of where you're headed and where you want to be in 3, 5, 10 years. And if you don't know where you're going, it's hard to plan to get there. So once you have that vision, then laying out a strategic plan of the steps you're going to take this year to drive towards that vision. You talked earlier about the motivation and the energy. Just doing this creates that momentum and the energy around where the organization's headed, and plays a huge role in moving towards a growth mindset. The fifth step's really looking at failures as opportunities. A key part of a growth mindset is the understanding that failure is a necessary stop on the road to success. And too often we look at failure as something that's a huge black eye. We want to avoid it at all costs. Yet some of the most impactful learning that happens is when we fail. And we can't miss that. It's a necessary evil to the growth mindset. And then the final thing I'd say is be authentic. A growth mindset demands authenticity in how you think and act. Really lead as the person you are, not the person you think you should be or that you think others think you should be. And sometimes this requires us to be a little more vulnerable than we're used to our team, but honesty and openness go a long way to inspire people to follow us as a leader. And all of these 6 things play into adopting a growth mindset.
That's great, Jim. And I'm familiar with those 6 steps, but it's really helpful to hear you walk through them again, because as you said, it's a journey. It's not like you get to the 6th step and then you stop and you have a growth mindset for the rest of your life, right? New challenges, new opportunities, new capabilities, just kind of continually provide that opportunity to work on your growth mindset. So I love that you've broken it down into those 6 steps. So as you've seen individuals do this, or firms kind of, turn this into a culture, what type of results have you seen?
Well, when you lead with a growth mindset, you move from being restricted by your resources, your thinking, and anything is possible. Again, you aren't limited by your history or your preconceived beliefs on what the firm can and can't do. And we work with a lot of firms in a given year, and I can tell you that mindset, and specifically a growth mindset by leadership, is the single biggest determinant of a firm's success and growth. So when you ask how have they been successful, it's going to depend firm by firm, and depending on where they want to go, the success is driven by working in that direction. And so really the success again is determined by these leaders that take that growth mindset rather than restricting themselves.
All right. And now with topics like this, since we spend the majority of our time within the accounting profession, we can sometimes limit the thinking just to the accounting profession. But where do you see outside of the accounting profession this topic being relevant? Do you see other industries or no other individuals outside of accounting that are really excelling in this area?
Well, it's really a topic about leadership, and leadership applies to any business that we're in. But for the example that probably stands out the most to me is in the high tech area. It's changing so fast and evolving. And if you are a leader of a technology organization and just resting on your laurels and the success that you've had in doing the same thing, someone's going to replace you pretty quick. And the examples are many, but take you know, Blockbuster wasn't high tech, but they were replaced by high tech. And it wasn't like they didn't know the concept of streaming, weren't looking at it, but they were making a lot of money. And so we have to, no matter what our business is, we have to be willing to really think about how we disrupt ourselves before we become the victim of disruption. And so, to sum it up, it applies everywhere, but probably high tech's the one that stands out the most to me.
Right. So for those listening, let's say they're energized, they're thinking, you know what, I've been kind of realizing my mindset is maybe stuck in the fixed. What's kind of the first step someone could take in kind of moving forward to developing more of a growth mindset? What's the one takeaway from this conversation you want someone to have?
Well, I'm going to go back to my 6-step process and focus us in on number 4, because I think if you do that reflection and realize that you're kind of stuck, you feel like you're just doing the same thing and you're maybe just making incremental changes to survive, you got to push yourself and you got to look beyond today and look to the future. Obviously, we've had a lot of challenges over the last year, and there's some element of having to react and the word of the year and pivot, but you can't spend all your focus and time and energy on that. You have to realize that we got to plan for the future too. And so my main takeaway for people is, if you haven't gone through a visioning process with your leadership and you haven't developed a strategic plan, that's the ideal first step towards leading yourself and your firm towards adopting a growth mindset. You got to start, paint that picture, and then start developing the strategies for how you're going to get there. So, a business that operates without a vision and plan is equivalent to being dropped off in a foreign city that you've never been to with no map or no navigation capabilities and trying to find your way to something that's on the other side of the city. You've got to start there. It not only gives you the guidance of what you need to do to get towards your vision, but as we've mentioned a couple times, it creates that energy, momentum, alignment. And then the third thing is just the process of doing it prepares you for when curveballs are thrown your way. I think it was Eisenhower that said, plans are worthless, but the process of planning is priceless. And I think I ad-libbed it, but it's along those lines that actually going through it and thinking through your business, taking a step back, makes you think from all different perspectives and angles that better prepares you for when you do get those those unexpected challenges that come your way.
Excellent advice, Jim. And I love the example of being dropped off in a city trying, that you don't know, and you're trying to get to something on the other side. That is what it would feel like to operate without a vision and a plan. So great
I
example
couldn't
there.
be too old school and just stick to map. I had to add a navigation tool.
Right. Yes, absolutely. All right. So as we wind down our conversation here, there may be some listeners that want to reach out to you, kind of get in contact with you. Where can they find you on social media?
I think the primary channels would be on Twitter and LinkedIn. My handle on both of them is very complicated. Jim Boomer, Jim Boomer, no spaces, no dots. So I'm just at Jim Boomer on Twitter, and my LinkedIn profile is also Jim Boomer.
Great. Thank you. I know you're active on both and putting out good content like this through both channels. So check Jim out on those two social media channels if you have a chance. So, Jim, as always, this was a fun conversation. Thanks for making yourself available for this episode of the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. That was fun.
Absolutely. And for those listeners, just a reminder, we release a new episode every Tuesday morning. So stay tuned next week for the next episode. Thanks so much.